Hello, hello. We are back again with another episode of DramaQuest. I am Zaide. As always, we have an awesome guest here. Today we are joined by Phatez. Phatez is the longtime guild leader of SEAL Team, the top guild on P1999 Green, which over the years has transformed, and we'll cover that. But he really took P1999 Green by storm. He is the leader currently of FTE, Fight to Engage, on the Oakwynd progression server, one of the probably like top 3 guilds there. And he is also a longtime hardcore World of Warcraft player. So, Fate's really glad to have you here. How's it going?
Good. Thank you for the warm introduction, Zaid. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to tell you and your viewers a little bit more about my gaming experience from EverQuest, TLP, and P99 as well as WoW. So, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Awesome. Hey, no problem. So, customary intro question here. How did you first discover EverQuest?
So the first I heard about EverQuest was on the bus ride to elementary school. One of the older kids on the bus was playing with a couple of his friends. So I was very young when I started playing, and I convinced my parents to go get me the game, and died over and over trying to get my halfling rogue over to the
Nice.
Commonlands tunnel. That was my
Right.
first experience. I was probably under level 10 for like 6 months.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I started with the game because I was so young, didn't really understand the social aspects of it, just trying to figure out kind of where to go, how to get around, and all that sort of stuff.
So, how long did it take for you to like do your first raid in EverQuest?
So my first raid, I think, was a Plane of Fear raid with the Glade Knights on Lannis server. They were primarily European guild, and that was probably a good year into playing. I think at that point, Kunark was out and Velius was about to come out, and so that's at least the first raid that I can remember going to, and I was probably in my high 40s still, or just kind of. I remember that one, and I remember a Chardock raid that I went to with them where I lost my corpse, in the bottom of
Nice.
Chardock, and we were on
Yeah.
a 4-hour corpse recovery. And as a child, that was kind of scary to try to figure out how I was gonna have someone get my corpse before dinner time.
Isn't it amazing now, like looking back and thinking, like, how the hell did we wipe in zones like Chardock?
Yeah, yeah,
With like
yeah.
the
Then
crazy shit
have
that
to
happens.
corpse summon 50 people to the zone.
Right. So when you made it all the way to that point where you were raiding a little bit, just getting your feet wet, was
Mhm.
that on the original rogue or did you change to a different class?
I originally settled. The first character I got past level 10 was a human monk, and that's what I played all the way through Planes of Power. And so I
Hell
quit
yeah.
right around. I played in Gates of Discord, but just for like a couple weeks, and that's when, I'm sure a lot of people have that same experience of. That's when we were jumped ship to WoW. So I
Yeah.
think that's about when WoW came out, 2002 or something like that.
Yeah, that's like I feel like that's like 90% of people almost everyone you talk to, Gates of Discord came out, World of Warcraft by. So when did you first come back to EQ? Was it for P99 or did you come back and dabble again later?
I played EQ a bunch of times between Planes of Powers and P99. I think it was Seeds of Destruction, House of Thule. I came back and played some of these later expansions. Never really hardcore. I joined guilds and did the raids and stuff, but I was never, as invested as I was during the original gameplay and as I am, now on Oakwynd, or I was during the SEAL Team era of P1999 Green. So I was, more of a, I guess when I'm not leading a guild, I call myself a visitor. I'm just kind of playing casually, visiting, that sort of stuff. But I've been leading guilds off and on in different games since 2014. So I think
Wow.
FTE is my sixth guild. And two of them are iterations of, or still running, that have been, the leadership's been passed on and they've merged with other guilds. So
Okay. So how did you in the midst of doing all that stuff, how did you discover P99?
I don't remember where I saw it. I think I just saw it like on forums or somewhere where I was just searching online. I remember I tried to download it when it first came out, and I couldn't figure out how to set it up. So I didn't start playing P99 until um, 2013 or so.
Okay.
So at that point, it was well into Kunark. Um, I would say it was about a year and a half or so into Kunark at that point. So
Right.
I
And so
kind
this
of
was the Blue
yeah,
server, right?
the Blues server, P1999 Blue
Yeah.
private server.
And they had
And
like a 5-year Cunark or something before
yeah,
Velius came out.
yeah. So
Jeez.
I think I joined like year 3.5 or something into that. So
Right.
I joined a guild called the Mystical Order there,
Hell yeah.
which was like the premier raiding guild. And when I joined, a lot of the leadership had just gotten banned, and so they started to kind of dwindle. And another guild called Inglorious Bastards took over. Who actually the leader of Inglorious Bastards, Omni or Getsum, is one of the co-leaders of FTE on Oakwynd with me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Getsum was an officer in Faceless on Agnar
yeah,
almost like 10 years ago now.
yeah.
So did you ever meet Zelot, or was it after he had quit? He did his big rage quit thing.
It was after I joined
Okay.
after. Um, I the person who I met in that era that I really got to know well was a warrior by the name of Detox, who
Yep.
then kind of took over the leadership roles of TMO because he was the only one left, and he transformed that guild into the guild Aftermath, which then had great success during Velius. And basically, there is a stage in Velius where I was one of his raid leaders and officers, and they were in battles with another guild called Awakened, and after that segment, before some meta shifts that occurred, Detox's guild kind of held the reins of the crown on P1999 Blue. But yeah, there was definitely like probably a good 10 or so transitions where there's different top guilds on P1999 Blue throughout the timeline, which was a really cool aspect of the server. That there was always on P1999 there was always cutthroat competition on who was going to get the top dragons and win those competitive encounters.
So what was it like competing with IB when they first came back and TMO was kind of in a rough spot?
Um, so I was pretty new, so I was just kind of learning the raid strategies. And so I would say for me it was enjoyable because I was learning a new approach. I could tell a lot of the older members of TMO that had been basically on top without much competition for the last 2 years were frustrated. There's a lot of man hours that goes into competition on P1999 as far as the dragons go. The way that the dragons work on P1999, they're 7 day spawns plus or minus 8 hours. And so you generally have somebody that's tracking the dragon, and then when it appears, you send out a some sort of message, whether it was a Discord message or a Twitter message, and rally all of your troops. Everybody shows up, and you kill it. So you basically have somebody sitting there that is going to wait from some period of time up to 16 hours to notify the guild that the dragon spawned. So if you wait that long period of time and then your guild doesn't kill the dragon, it can be frustrating. And so it was cool to see the competitive aspect. It was good to learn the encounters, but I could see kind of that environment where a lot of people were getting frustrated over time, because unlike the TLP, where there's instance versions of each of these dragons that everybody has access to that content. The high-end raid content was very exclusive on the P1999 servers. Only the guild that's on top and wins that target is going to get to kill that dragon that week.
Right. Yeah. It's like all or nothing pretty much every time there's a
Hmm.
mob. Now, P99 does simulated patch day called Quakes like once a month or so, right?
Right, right.
So
So,
does the Quake cause it to be like the variance in mobs is never too great? Because like the Quake happens, everything dies pretty much in one big day, and then 7 days later they're all in window together.
right. Yeah, so it depends on what expansion you're at. During Velius, there's a lot of 3 day targets like the Fear Golems, the Sleeper's Tomb Golems, Trachanon, and then I think Venril is either on 3 or 5. Zlandakar's on 5 days, and then there's a bunch on 7 days. So what it does is it actually creates you a nice little schedule. Like a quake
Hmm.
happens, then on the day after the quake and the second day after the quake, you can organize things that you want to do for your guild, like planar clears or events, whatever. Then you have your 3-day windows, then you have a day off, then you have your 5-day windows, and then you have your 7-day windows. So there is a pretty nice little structure to it, but there's generally targets on 4 out of 7 days, because once that variance starts to spread out, those 7-day targets bleed into day 8, the 3-day targets bleed into day 2. So if you go a
Right.
month without a quake, which sometimes they would the quakes were never like, okay, there's always 2 a month. They depends on where in the era you were at. It depends on who had their finger on the trigger, whether it was Rogan or one of the head GMs that was doing them. I think when the head GMs started doing them, they happened more frequently and more regularly.
Hmm. It sounds a lot healthier than I expected. The quakes really add a lot because just as humans, we want to have that level of consistency in
Mm-hmm.
our lives. And like when you're a hardcore raider, the raid game is such a big part of your life. Now, those 3-day targets, do you guys lose an appetite for them being the top guild after a while? Like Zlantikar loot, if you don't care about keys anymore, basically trash, right? Or is like tunnel fodder. So I would guess that the big boys are mostly after like Kale and TOV.
I can only speak to when I was playing on the server, but I basically stopped playing right around after we woke the sleeper on blue. So every single one of those Landakar windows, I was there the whole time, because that was a key that would go to our competition and give them a chance to compete with us in Sleeper's Tomb. We kept Sleeper's Tomb awake for, I think, 8 or 9 months after Velius came out, and I think we won something like the first 70 keys to Sleeper's Tomb, and the first key that we lost was due to we got disqualified for it because somebody who was turning in a Dozakar item to LTK accidentally engaged it, and because of the rules, there's a rule that if you're a tracker, you engage the target, you have to concede that target. So
Hmm.
so during that whole time, the Sleeper's Tomb mobs were our number one priority. We also never lost a Vulak during that time, but we prioritize things like Dozakar and King Tormax, which are the best loot. I would say arguably the most DKP per kill, except for Vulak, in Velius. We didn't prioritize those mobs. Instead, we prioritized the sleepers key mobs, and it actually
Okay.
turned out to be like a major part of burnout in the guild, right? Like you got people that are killing Zlandakar every 5 days. They don't need anything from Zlandakar. They don't need any more sleeper skis, but they're just killing that target to keep the kind of the threshold of keys out from the opponent's hands.
Right.
So
Otherwise, you got to start tracking Sleeper's Tomb, and like you can't stop them from waking it once they have like 20 people, right?
yeah, so they had enough people to wake the sleeper for about, not to wake it, sorry, but to kill a warder for about a month before we woke it. And
Hmm.
we at that point we started leaving Ventania because Ventani took 40 people to kill.
Right. Hardest one is like Gornair, but
Yeah,
it's got two AEs that suck, right? And but
it's
it
got a
drops the best
slow.
loot too, right? The monk
Yeah,
robes.
yep. So that our monks were not happy about that
Yeah.
when we decided, like, okay, they've got their 18 keys. We know they can kill an Enzada now. We're not going to leave an Enzada up anymore. We're going to leave Ventani up, and you could see kind of the life drain out of some of our new monk apps' eyes that were like, oh, I just got my sleeper's key. I just have enough DKP to get a robe, but now it's going to be the one that's left up.
Yeah.
I actually really don't like the concept of Sleeper's Tomb for this game because it creates a lot of unnecessary drama and hurt feelings. So the idea that like certain players have control over completely locking out everybody else from a set of content, but it's part of the game. It's
Yeah.
there, and so you play the game that as it's written.
Did you hear what we did on Agnar with the Sleeper's Tomb?
You woke it up and you deleted all the loot, right?
Yeah, yeah. We woke it up the day that the server launched with like 20 people. We went in there and woke it, and then we deleted all the loot. And if it was like a monk robe we put on a bard, just to make sure that it wasn't something that, because on TLPs you could use like a reclaim token or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got rid of all the loot, so it didn't exist. There was like a 3 guild alliance that went in and tried to do an instanced version.
Yeah.
Before we got in there, I think they got 3 of the dragons down, but they never got Ventani. So
right, because he's a little harder. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there is still hurt feelings over that too. Like, no matter what you do, you're put in an impossible situation, where no matter what you do, people are going to be upset. And also, that's one of the kind of factors. That's one of the differences between P99 and TLP, with the implementation of the dynamic zones. Right now on TLP, every single player, no matter how hardcore or casual they are, they have an opportunity to experience all of the content. And on P99, there's only 20 to 30% of the player base that gets to experience that content.
Right. It's like a good and bad, because you can experience the content, but the content feels lessened by that, right? Like, you've seen how many Cloaks of Flames were on Oakwynd and Classic compared to like what you would get in Classic on Green. It is just mind blowing.
Yeah,
I think our guild alone had like 50 one time.
I didn't get my Cloak of Flames until Kunark, or I think it might have, Kunark on P99, and I was the guild leader, right?
Right.
So there's definitely a big difference. And yeah, every item I had on that server, I was like, oh, this is the timeline was a lot longer. Everything meant more, but it's different. It's just a different way to experience the content. Different people like different approaches. So to be honest, I've enjoyed both of them. There's parts of both of them that I've enjoyed. On Oakwynd, I've enjoyed how, I wouldn't say how easy everything is, but just how accessible everything is. I have friends that played on P99 for 2 years and never hit max level. Right now, if I have a buddy that wants to come play with me, I can power level them in a couple days, and then we can have fun playing the game, enjoying the game together. So it's just a different approach.
You could be like a standard like corporate professional and still do all the raid content on TLP, which is like the beauty of it. Your friends who haven't seen you in years, so they're like, "Oh my gosh, you come outside now?" You're like, "Yeah."
Yeah. I mean, so now I lead a guild on Oakwynd called Fight to Engage, and we have our scheduled raid days Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday from 8:30 to 12 Eastern. So during those times, everybody logs in, they get to play, and then they don't have to log in any other time to get to experience all of the content. So that there is something to be said about, especially with the game that has such a older group of players as their following, that have kids, they have jobs, they have a lot of responsibilities, but they still want to play a game that they consider their favorite pastime.
Right. Now, do you guys still bat phone here and there on Oakwynd?
Yeah, it depends on what's going on, but different weeks we bat phone more. I mean, there was a week where everybody who cheated got suspended for a week, and so almost no one in our guild got suspended, but the guild that was killing the open world targets, they had a significant portion of their leadership suspended for cheating, and so we killed all the open world targets that week except one Faradar. Or maybe it was 2 Faradars, but we killed everything else. And so, we could kind of do them when we wanted. We didn't, I'm not trying to waste everybody's time doing 4 or 5 open world targets a day and only winning a portion of them, especially when we're able to kill in our DZs, in our dynamic zone splits, we're able to kill more of the dragons in just that 3-hour period of time than spawn the whole week in the open world. So it's just about, min-maxing the time that we have.
And I mean, like, TLP is such a different beast because you have 2 or 3 months of Kunark instead of like 6 months, 9 months, whatever, or for Blue, 5 years. And like, who fucking cares about a track BP that you're going to replace the first week of Velius? Like, when every single guild is getting a full TOV clear, maybe 2 full TOV clears a week on TLP, it just doesn't, the Kunark loot just doesn't hold up, right?
Yeah. And so there's some strategies that we've kind of focused on with TLP, is just maximizing the amount of dynamic zone loot. So now what we're doing is we're killing 5 Faradars in about 3 hours, using 5 raids of 30 players. And
Right.
so I'll be in 3 of those raids, right? I'll bring 1 or 2 characters to one, kill it, then we'll all swap to our different characters, kill it again, and we can do that over and over because of the change they made for Oakwynd where the dynamic zones are character based, not account based. So you can do, if you have 8 characters, you can do VP 8 times if they're all keyed.
Yeah.
Um, and so, for doing this, we're really kind of focusing on just trying to maximize the amount of loot we're able to get in that 3 to 3.5 hour raid window that we have.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you do that, the big Fardar, are you guys just rolling in Rock and Silverwing and then PD and repeating?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we do Hoshkar too. Well,
Oh yeah, yeah.
so yeah,
Gotta get the boots.
got to get the boots and the green scales. But Hoshkar is harder than Silverwing and PD, so it's a balance between like, do I want to use characters of resources, or the way I look at them. So I could bring 24 characters and do PD. I tried 30 characters. We struggled with Hoshkar with 30 because we were only bringing 2 or 3 warriors and 4 clerics. So
Mm-hmm.
probably what we'll do for this week's reset is have a couple raids that have a few more people in them, and then drop down to even less people for the Silverwing PD and the other ones.
Yeah, yeah. You just get that one lockout and then shift and make sure there's some person with that lockout in every other raid. In the beyond AOC era, because they pretty much stop AOCs in Planes of Power. It gets even, the strategies are really built around that because things that were always instanced in EQ, which is like Plane of Time and Beyond, never had that account lock. It was always a character lock. So everything, like the strategies have like years and years of being built on that. So it was actually like, it made sense when they took that away, because Agents of Change locking your whole account was always kind of weird. And I think it was put in because when they proposed the instancing for the first time, everybody was like, there was a lot of people who were opposed to it, and it was kind of throwing the hardcore crowd a bone. Like, look, everyone can get loot, but open world still matters because they can't get as much loot as you can.
Right.
But now it's just like, we're like 8 years into that, and we realize how great it was for the servers and everything. So no one cares. Just do as much DZ rating as you want.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. I mean, on PD, on VP days in our guild, we've got 90 people in voice, and they're all just having the best time because they're getting opportunities at 30 plus items for which are the best in era items for 3 hours of work. So it's been a lot of fun. Going through this TLP experience.
I'm excited to talk to you in a couple months. You guys, September 14th, right? Velius launch?
Yeah. I guess I'll
excited
have to start planning for that.
TOV. TOV is a nightmare on TLP servers because of Mitigation of the Mighty.
Right.
Did they tell you that like not only the dragons, but all their little Drake guards have MOTM?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I have almost no TLP experience. I played on Vinicky for a month in Bind Rush, and I played on Eridune for a little over a month with Adabishi and That's EQ Baby during Kunark. So this is kind of my first run through of TLP. So I'm learning as I go.
Yeah.
The first Inaruk raid that we did, I didn't know we could slow it because I was just we didn't really kill Inaruk on P1999 because it's a pain and the loot really wasn't worth it. So I'm learning as we go, and I'm looking forward to TOV because I would say TOV is one of the zones I know the most about from P1999, but everything's different. So I have to take everything I've learned, throw it away, and relearn. Like I know what abilities the dragons do, but how you handle them is completely different.
Yeah, TOV, it's just a rough one because it doesn't feel hard. It feels like an easy zone, but it just takes so much time. Have you ever rated Vexthal? It's I think it's worse than Vexthal now in terms of that slog. But anyway, so you were big on blue, doing everything hardcore there, and then so you were probably still playing when you heard about green, or did you move on to another game at that point?
So after blue, I took a break. And I played Chronos 3 private server for WoW Classic.
Okay.
So on Chronos 3, I led a guild. I led a guild called Conquest, which was a a throwback to Conquest on Lannis. As a kid, I looked up to them and saw them clearing all the raid content and stuff. And so we did. It was I'd say like a casual hardcore guild We were the third guild on that private server to clear AQ40, which was one of the tiers of raid content there. But it was a dad guild for the most part. And during that time, I played, I think, about a year there, and then they announced the release of WoW Classic, and there is the Kronos private servers had a few prominent guilds throughout their time, and one of them was called Onslaught, guild led by Faye, and so they had plans to take the WoW Classic release and go hardcore. And I don't remember the exact month that came out. I think it was like September of 2018, I think. It was either 2018 or 19. But I joined that guild. I did the speed leveling. I practiced for about 3 months speed leveling. And I did a 6-man group for speed leveling that was based off of AoE spell damage, and we were the first group in the world to hit level 60 when WoW Classic came out. There's only 2 people that beat us. One of them was Joker, who's a Twitch streamer now in the clan Method, and the other one was a Hunter, and they were both solo players that beat us. So
Okay.
we did that 5 days. Then a day and a half later, the rest of our guild caught up to us, and we were the first guild to kill Ragnaros and clear Molten Core Horde side. Two other guilds beat us that were alliance guilds, and so that was kind of where I was at when I rolled a warrior as my next character, and I was one of their main tanks. So that's pretty much where I was at when P1999 Green came out. I was, playing World of Warcraft with most of my time. And so I did nothing to prepare for the launch of Green. I didn't even know I was going to play. They're like, oh, it's out. I was like, okay. I think it was like Sunday afternoon. The server had been out 40 hours or something. I made my gnome necro, and I started leveling, and I invited a bunch of the guys from Aftermath that wanted to play. I just recruited people as I leveled, and that was kind of where SEAL Team started. Was just I didn't even it started as a side project while I was focusing on Onslaught and playing WoW Classic.
That's kind of crazy because like hearing that you guys were basically like an organic guild, a grassroots guild, right? Versus Kingdom, which pre-formed, and they ended up being basically like the perennial losers of the raid game. You know what I mean? Versus you guys who came up like the normal way. Just is it because first you had the hardcore guys from Aftermath already as a good little base, but like you leveled ahead of the curve, so the people that you met to guild invite just naturally tended towards that level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, I leveled pretty quickly, but there was probably, I don't know, 50 people that beat me to max level.
Now you had Oakley in your guild, right?
Oakley, yeah, he was my favorite. He was one of the reasons we were so strong starting out. I didn't know you knew Oakley, but yeah.
So I knew Oakley as cute little cow. Like it was a woman who streamed on Twitch, and she was the cleric, right? Am I thinking of the right person?
Bailey.
Bailey. I'm thinking of Bailey, but I know Oakley
Yeah,
too. Oakley,
yeah.
a friend of Bailey, right?
Yes. So
Yes, yes.
those
So
two joined me. See, after they hit 50, yeah, I
yeah.
got to recruit them. No, I mean, I know exactly what led to our success of early on. There was Green. Green was overpopulated.
Hmm.
Almost all the high level people joined Kingdom
Hmm.
because they were well ahead of us. I was one of the higher people in my guild, but it was mostly low level people. I recruited clerics, spammed every cleric I saw above level 20, and told them about who I was, invited them to the guild. Then the servers split, and they created the teal server. And when they created the teal server, Kingdom went to teal, and that was their biggest mistake
Yeah.
because when they went to teal, there was a lot of players that stayed on green that were in Kingdom, and all of those players I recruited. And I recruited every single high level player. I set my sights on killing Nagy. I think there was only like 6 level 50s on the server at that point. Everyone told me I was crazy. I had level 30s. They're like, should I just keep leveling? Like, you guys are just gonna go wipe, right? And I was like, no, like, come join us. And I invited everyone to that Nagy kill. I invited the entire server to our first Nagy and our first Vox kill. and I randomed the loot out to everybody that attended, and most of those people ended up joining the guild.
Naturally, right? It's a good look, so they want to join.
Yep. So that's what we did. We killed Nagy with, I think we had a level 50 warrior. I think we only had 5 level 50s at the time. We pulled her into King Tranix's room, had all of the healers kind of in Scarlorn's cubby, a spot I had never fought her. We used a couple pets. At the end, everyone started dying. I had everyone bind down at the ledge there, but I don't think it made much of a difference because it was like, 10 or 15% is when we started running out of healer mana. But it ended up working. It was a long kill. I think an Imp Protector from Leknot, one of the enchanters from Oakley and Bailey's crew, would top the DPS. We had like 15 to 20 healers ranging from level 24 to 50, all just healing. And it was just a really cool, fun kind of encounter to go through. And that kind of set the stage for SEAL team to be successful on green, was that kill. And at that point in time, I think Kingdom had double to triple the number of 50s that we had. They just didn't try it.
Yeah. So I was on Teal, and I was in Kingdom at that time. I started late, kind of like you did, and I didn't think I was going to do anything. I was just there casually with some friends, and I ended up just kind of leveling pretty fast. I was a solo necro for most of it. And Kingdom just had a huge leadership vacuum at the time. Their leader, this guy named Wrath, I swear he was like a level 12 or 15 ranger when we were doing the dragons. And he didn't initiate anything. There was this guy named Stappa. I have no idea what happened to him after I left, but he was a barbarian warrior. Once he hit 50, he pretty much like took the reins and pushed us to raid. But basically, there was just no one calling any shots over there until this one random dude hit 50. And as soon as like I was reading about what you guys were doing, like I saw Rants and Flames posts on the forums about you guys camping, like the Soulfire shit, and like the what is the one you camp, like the little elf skeleton in Befallen for the 1CH or whatever Reaper thing. Anyway, I can't remember because I'm not really like a P99er, but
we got all those nerfed.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. And I think I remember seeing you camp like the Woolly Spider for Silk Nets and stuff. And Kingdom was not doing any of that stuff back then. So I was just like, this is going to be a disaster. If they merge these servers anytime soon, Kingdom is going to get their shit pushed in. And that was the sentiment. Like all the guys who I knew who were real hardcore players that happened to be in Kingdom were all like talking in the background about that. They're like, dude, as soon as this guild merges over there, we need to find like a new guild, or we need to form a new guild now, because this is not the guild. You know what I mean? So I think the perception from the crew that was on Teal was that SEAL team was miles ahead, even if it wasn't the reality. The only hardcore player that we had that was like pushing really hard was Valeth, and I don't know what he did after he hit 50. I think he was really there for like the leveling push.
Yeah, I think he was the server first 50, right?
Right. Yeah, he beat Bailey by like
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember her being pissed because he was getting power leveled for the last few levels.
Yeah. And I mean, hey, like she was a cleric, so like winning the race as a cleric is crazy anyway. Like just being that high, you know?
Yeah.
And Enchanter is a class you would expect to win.
Right. And she came back and won the 60 race,
Oh, did she?
Yeah, she did when Kunar came out. She didn't play the second half of Classic, but when Kunar came out, she came back and won the race to 60.
She's a beast.
Yeah, with one of my friends, Prismar, he played Enchanter, so they duoed.
Okay.
For the 55 to 60 portion.
What do you do on the Kunark grind on P99? Is it like Bear Pit and Permafrost? Because I know they changed the Zems and made like Perma really good and stuff. Or do you do like Chardock?
Everything.
Everything.
They did Chardock at the end. I think they did Bear Pits a bit. They did AoE farming and Burning Woods with the Bard to get some of the first few levels. I mean, I would say Bear Pits was like the best Zem, but it was overcamped. And so they divided it up into 4 camps. Right?
Oh.
Yeah. So there's no picks on P99. There's only one of each zone. So if there's 23 mobs or 30 mobs and there's 4 groups going after them, it's not going to be that great. Chardock was like the kennels was relatively uncontested.
You have to be higher to get there, right? So if you're ahead of the
Yeah,
curve.
right. So that's where they finished was
Okay.
kennels.
Now, if you could have the bear pits uncontested, just like one duo or one group, do you think that would be the best all the way to 60, or do you think the mob level just drops off too much?
That's what I did. I was the server first 60 XR, and
Mm,
I started my XR about 2 weeks into Kunark.
okay.
And I had friends help level it when I was sleeping. It was I
Right.
didn't, yeah. But that's what it was in the bear pits from 52 to 60.
Wow. Yeah. So that's good. And the cool thing about the bear pits is like the mobs are all like very simple, right? There's no
Yeah,
like, you don't have to deal with any casters down there. Do they have like the ice witch or that really bad screaming terror thing down there? Probably not on P99.
it's just icy terrors with a knockback.
Just a standard one. So
Yeah.
on TLP, they used to have this crazy one that was in the pits that had like an AoE stun, went through
No,
walls
no,
and shit.
nothing like that.
Yeah.
The worst thing is the other groups would drop, like you could drop mobs through the trap doors. So if you didn't
Mm,
like the group in lower pits, you just drop like a couple magi's and a priest through the trap, and then they path back through the whole bear
right.
pits. So I kept the lower bear pits, and people would drop mobs on us, and we'd just kill them.
Hmm. Do you have any concerns with like Lady Vox during that?
She would die instantly, like she would
Oh,
get
just
killed.
still
You
that
know,
competitive?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The classic mobs continued to stay competitive because there's so the thing about since there's no dynamic zones at all, everybody's competing for these same mobs. So right now on TLP, it's not very competitive because everybody gets fed, right? There's no one starving. But if you take all of the player base and only give them the the open world targets, then more people have a desire to kill the open world targets.
Mm.
So I mean, to this day, I'm pretty sure Vox dies fairly quickly.
So people keep a team of 52s just for
Mm-hmm.
that. Interesting. I mean, I like that. It makes the server feel a bit more alive.
Yeah, you have the meta because it takes so long to do everything. The meta is to just and all of your buddies quit over time, so you just have a character at every raid target. Oh, statue popped. Let me log in my Kale cleric. Something in
Yeah.
TOV. I have my main there.
Right.
Box pop. Oh, I'm gonna log in my 52 bard that I have.
Now,
So
what do you do when you want to win loot on one of those targets, but it's like a no drop piece of loot? You have to travel there like really
yeah,
quick.
you just run there. Yeah, yeah. Potion of frost. Same thing that you do on
Right.
TLPs. Um, we still kept Potion of Frost on our 60s because a level 60 monk pulling all of the giants out of a Vox engage is more useful. Like a 60 monk and shaman is more useful than 4 or 5 level 52s because now your level 52s are handling the dragon and your 60s are cleaning everything else up.
Hmm.
So, just kind of going back to the beginning of Green, one of the things that we started with, at the time I was in Onslaught, which was extremely hardcore, and that's kind of what I envisioned building SEAL Team as. So I created Raider requirements for everyone. And so before you could get any dragon loot at all, you had to get the Raider requirements. And you had mentioned the woolly spider nets. That was one of the Raider requirements there.
Yeah. You know what? I remember being really impressed with that because, that list was like shared out and stuff. I thought that was really great.
Yeah, and it was not. I mean, the list didn't originate from me. That was something that was required on Aftermath and in Blue. I don't know if it was required as much, but the idea of it. But we started out right out the get. In order to get Raider, you had to be level 50. You had to have every item on the list, which included a bunch of clickies, invis pots, healing potions, the spider nets, and then we raided 3 times a day. We did all the 8-hour giant spawns, King Tranix, Rokal. We did them in the morning, in the afternoon, and late night. And we would use these as practice. So my guild would be in there clearing up to do Tranix, and I would train all of Afridi on them. And I would say, okay, everybody use your woolly spider nets, click and move, click and move. And all of a sudden you would see 30 people kind of move to the other side of Fire Giant Ledge, and there would be 20 rooted LDCs and imps there. And at this point, our raid crew was like 40 to 50, but it was very hardcore players. It was all the first people that had leveled to 50, and we did these training exercises. We had Lord Nagafin completely uncontested, but starting with even our second and third Lord Nagafin kills, we would engage it with like 8 giants up, and we would get the giants in a kite, pull Lord Nagafin out, kill it, and then kill the giants. So we were training for the competitive engages, a month, 2 months before the server merged. And that was just kind of that was the atmosphere in the guild. That was what everybody liked that about it. When the windows would start, we didn't give any tracking DKP, but there would be 20 people at the zone, and it was just like, we're going to try and engage it as quickly as we can, you know. And that has something to do with the 7-day windows also. When Classic came out, there was no plane of hate. There was no plane of fear. We had Nagy and Vox only. So when those windows opened, it was once a week, and that was the only thing, that was kind of going on. And we had waited all week to do those. So everybody was interested in kind of sticking around and waiting for the dragons to appear.
Now, did you guys lock down Finny too?
I don't. I know we killed it daily. I don't remember what the spawn time. I think it's 12 hours, right?
Yeah.
So I think we killed it twice a day. I'm pretty sure we did. Yeah.
So you guys left no scraps.
I remember the first time we were contested. It was a guild called Venerate, and we had all of the giant timers, exact timers, and they went and like brought their whole raid in like an hour before it was going to spawn and stopped on it. Stood on the spawn point, which there was no rules for the raid content on the server at the time. There was the GMs didn't have any rules for us. On Blue, huge list of 30 rules that everybody had to follow. We didn't have rules yet. And so they, about 2 minutes before they spawned, we all zoned in and just ran up to them and DPS raced them.
Nice.
I think we ended up giving them the loot from it, but I just remember that was the first time somebody tried to contest us there. And so the GMs didn't give us any rules, and I talked to Mendon, or I think it was Mendon at the time, about he suggested creating a Discord UN, and get all the guild leaders there. So we did that, and probably one of the things that I had seen on Blue was that the guilds were really toxic towards each other, and I watched the area where all of these other guilds, like, if you're not one of the top 2 guilds, you got to kill nothing. So during the first month or so of the server, when I kind of had control and power to kind of designate what was going to happen on this server, we created this UN, we brought all the guilds in, and I created rotations for things like the Plane of Fear and Plane of Hate clears, things like Tranix. Tranix was on a rotation. If you were part of the UN, you had your time slots for Tranix. And there was a lot of drama because everyone wanted more time slots. Like, I only get 3 Tranix time blocks a week. You guys get 5. This guild's getting 1. I think I should have 4 instead of 3. There was all this back and forth. And then I created the open raids. So once a month, all of the raid targets were open raids for the entire server where everybody could come. And it was just one giant clusterfuck of 150 to 200 people killing Nagy. All the loot was rolled out. So I figured this was, kind of a way for everybody to get to experience the content on a server where there was only one of this thing available every week.
Right. And that kind of lets you get ahead of it a little bit. So when the GMs decide they have to force rules, at least they don't think that you were like this toxic element. Kind of like TMO had a really bad reputation for this, right?
Yeah. They did that anyway. I mean, they thought, despite that, they still thought, we were toxic for killing everything. And what the other guilds wanted, they're like, well, we don't want to kill it with 180 people. We want to kill it with our 24 people, and we want you not to be able to contest us for it. So they ended up colluding and putting forth a proposal that was like bag limits, basically, like a guild can't kill any more. And I basically at the early days, I told them, if there's ever something like this, then going to destroy the UN, not going to be participating in it anymore. And that's eventually what happened. During Kunark, we killed 33 Trakanons in a row, and the GMs put bag limits in, and then we blew up all of the deals and rules that we had made at that point, because basically the GMs asked us to do this thing. And this is probably one of the biggest issues I have with how P99 was run. The GMs were very hypocritical on that server. And they said they wanted the players to work things out, but then they kind of went behind the players' back and did these other things, which completely, blew all of that up. But they ended up putting in bag limits for Tracknon because we had won so many.
I heard they eventually had like limits, like your bard pullers couldn't have like cello drums.
Yeah, they did all sorts of stuff.
That's insane.
So yeah, we weren't allowed to use cellos drums. They nerfed our clickies. So after we had won, I think we had won every Nagi. We had all the blade stoppers. They made it so Rune can't have aggro. They made Soulfire quest not be able to be completed by non-paladins. They made items not rechargeable anymore. And then all the guys on blue got pissed because they'd been using these items for a large chunk of time. Now, what that did was it created a new meta for raids, which is fine. I like that part about it. I wasn't really upset about the clicky nerfs. I thought it was kind of funny because the clickies had been like that for so long on blue, and then finally the way we used them on green, which we knew how to use them going into the server, and once you control all the blade stoppers, you can engage Nagafin with every single giant up because you just run in, blade stopper, run in a circle, have somebody taunt Nagi or dump like a whole set of strings into it and pull it out of the lair. And all of a sudden, you might have to pull a wizard or magi out too, but you have every single giant in a kite and you pull Nagi into the hallway and kill it. Things like this, kiting in Plane of Fear. If you have a blade stopper and a mana stone on a blade stopper and a mana stone on a monk, and wart pots, you can completely manipulate all of the aggro. If you want it on you, you want it off of you, you can do all these different things to kind of mess with the kites and all that stuff to leash all the mobs from CT so you can burn it down. So these items were, pretty integral in the current strategies there to get the kills, which was basically to engage whatever dragon was as quickly as possible with killing as little trash as possible so that the opposition had no chance at killing it at all. Like Kingdom at that time had zero chance at killing Nagi with 15 giants up. They just
Right.
didn't have the strategies. They had never practiced anything like that. So when the servers merged and Nagi was up and we both went for it, I remember Rogan actually yelled at us. We had this strategy, and Oakley was the one that always yelled at people. We always ran under the bridge at Nagi, and we left everything in Tranix alive. We never killed any of those giants. Everybody shrunk and ran under the bridge with Lev, and so we did that. And then a couple Kingdom guys came up the ramp and aggroed those giants. And then Rogan's like, SEAL team, you need to go back. He said it in shout because he was watching it. He's like, you need to go back and kill those giants. I was like, we didn't even aggro those giants, but it's whatever. We went back and killed the giants and then still engaged Nagi with like 8 other giants up and killed it. But that was just our approach to how we were doing the raids, and it was a lot of fun to have a group of like 40 to 50 guys there that all had the same desire and approach of how to play the game.
Honestly, it's super amazing and kind of motivating to hear because, like, as you've seen on TLP, the meta is just totally different. It's more like a bodies game, you know what I mean, versus having a small number of people just at their peak, you know what I mean. Was there issues like if you train a person to that point where they can do all the kites and they understand the clickies and they've got them, it seems like attrition would be huge as an issue that you face because you lose someone who's highly trained versus losing a person who just has to press one button.
So our loot system was the reason we had very low attrition.
Hmm.
So I'll just go back one more thing because there's a huge part that I haven't talked about, which is it was rude of me not to mention up until this point. I started SEAL Team, didn't have any plan, didn't really have like a officer crew or anything like that. I was very lucky because within, I would say, 2 weeks of starting it, there's 4 or 5 other guys that took over incredible amounts of responsibility and became co-leaders of the guild after 6 months. So without these 4 or 5 guys, it was you might recognize some of the names. It was Smash, Atuk, Vil, Quicken. These 4 guys all co-led the guild with me for the first like year and a half. They even before they were co-leaders, they were doing it. They built everything. I was more like, here's my vision, here's what I see. I want it to be like this. I want recruitment to be like this. I want the Raider toolkit. They did all the work. They were incredible. Each one of those guys deserves more credit than I do for what SEAL Team turned into. And Oakley too. Oakley also. Oakley only played with us for about 6 months, but he was like the first one. He was the right-hand man from the beginning. One of the things that we built was a very unique loot system. And I took Onslaught's loot system and kind of tried to apply it to P1999. And it was a list loot system. So the way it worked, once you submitted your Raider toolkit and you got 50 and you were Raider status, you submitted a list of 10 items that you wanted. And it could be items for any character. It didn't have to be your main, whatever. A lot of high value items were placed on this list. And you ranked them 10 Blade Stopper, 9 Puppet Strings, however you wanted it, 10 AON, with 1 being the least valuable. Every time one of those items dropped, everybody at the raid, their numbers went up by 1. So if I put Cloak of Flames at 10, and there's 2 other guys with Cloak of Flames at 10, whoever had higher RA got the Cloak of Flames, but everyone who's there, Cloak of Flames was now at 11. So you could see if you miss one raid, that's really bad, right? Because you could drop down in the pecking order. I would never do this again because it was psychologically not healthy for the people in the guild, right? You had people that were going after these really contested items like AON, which didn't drop for 6 months, or there would be a big chunk of time in, and they're like canceling real life plans to make sure they don't miss CT, which can spawn at any time in this window, or if a quake happens. And it just led to like a lot of people just never quit. They just went, and then eventually they fizzled because of just how crazy they were going. I didn't have that intention of it. It worked really well in WoW, and I wanted to try it out. And it ended up, I would say it worked really well. I would say it was one of the things that caused that guild to be so successful, but it wasn't very humane, I would say, overall. So that's one of the things. Our attrition was very low because people had all these items. They're like, I've put in all of this work towards the item. I'm 5th on the list now. Everyone could see where they were on the list, how many people were in front of them. Like I've worked 6 months towards it. I'm 5th on the list. I'll get it, in the next few months. But it also created a dynamic where some people were like hoping other people would miss raids.
Right. We gotta engage this Nagfam quick. I know this guy's on the way.
Right. Yeah. But it was that loot system I don't think has ever been used on EverQuest before.
It seems unique from what I've seen.
Yeah, and it ended up having a lot of flaws towards the end, like when the list was like 50 people long for something, and new people join the guild and they're so far behind. Like, how's that going to work out? And we weaned off of it. The guild SEAL team basically went through the entire timeline of P1999, and then they got rid of it. And when they merged with Force of Will to create Good Guys and went to a fully DKP, because at that point the server's stagnant, progression's over. SEAL team accomplished all it needed to, which was it was a progression guild. Then there's a whole new meta that you need for a stagnant server. You can't have the same rule set, the same procedures and policies, because they're not going to work. It's a completely different game at that point. You need something
the push
that's
is over.
Right. And so that's when the guild transformed into good guys.
You said that was with Force of Will?
Force of Will, yeah. So it was about halfway through Velius where like our numbers were starting to go down. That attrition, like people got their sleepers gear, right? What are you gonna do? I have my robe on my monk. I've got a SOD. Like I don't need to play 70 hours a week anymore. People were accomplishing what they wanted to accomplish. So we were going from 110 people on a Quake to 63 people. And so the first guild I looked at was Safe Space. And I actually infiltrated Safe Space, and I joined their guild on a wizard. And while we were co-raiding with them, and I was in their voice, and I heard what they were saying, which was basically like, SEAL team is dying. We're going to use them, but we're like, we want them to die. So I was like, okay, that's not a good relationship for us. And so then with Smash, I convinced Smash. Smash was at this point, I would say, like the most influential guild leader in the guild. I was no longer a guild leader. I had stepped back a bit, but I was still my voice was still treated as equal behind the doors. So when talking with Smash about these things, we switched our direction to Force of Will, and we had a great alliance with Force of Will that lasted like a good 4 to 5 months before it merged. And at this point, Force of Will wasn't killing things like Vulak and Dozakar when they started raiding with us. And then they had a lot of great players, but they were a smaller guild. I think they were running like 40 people, 50 people at most during prime time. So they had a lot of great leaders, a lot of great players, and after about 4 months of raiding together, then the guilds merged into good guys.
I think the last time I played on Green, I think I was in Force of Will.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago, but yeah, that's where I ended up. I left Kingdom. I was like, yeah, I knew I wasn't going to play hard. I was like a casual guy at that point. You know what I mean? Because I'm always busy with the TLPs. Kingdom had like some crazy tax system where you had to pay like tons and tons of plat all the time, or something like that was going on. I wasn't a fan of it. But I just think it's really funny. You know what I mean? Things kind of come full circle because the first guild to ever contest you was Venerate. Venerate merged with Black Lotus to make Force of Will.
Right.
And then they came back with you later to make Good Guys. So just like the circle is complete.
Yeah, we didn't burn any bridges. That's one thing I've learned with EverQuest. You never want to burn any bridges because the player base is so small. The guys that are on the opposite side of the ring of you now, in 5 years you might be in a guild with them.
Yeah, you're definitely better at that than I am because I know you and I have talked about like different people, that we've come in contact with that are the same folks, competing with us, and I'm like, yeah, fuck those guys, never. And you're like, I'm gonna give it a shot. You know what I mean? And it's hard.
Sometimes it turns out to bite you in the butt, but it is
right.
what
But hey,
the way I look at it, it's a game that we all love, right? We all have the same hobby.
Yeah.
And so even if you're the enemy at one point, like we do have a shared interest, the fact that like we choose to spend our time playing this game.
Yeah, absolutely. So to back things up just a little bit here, you guys, when the teal merge happened, that was, were the planes already out, or was it before the planes came out?
Before, I believe it was before.
Mm-hmm. So was there any concern with Kingdom coming over where you guys like, this could be like some real competition, or had you already dialed in on the fact that they kind of sucked?
I never made it about them. It was always about us. It was always about how many giants can we engage Nagy with? How can we do this better? What's our strategy for this? We weren't worried about them because I knew that they weren't doing what we were doing. I think people were actually kind of looking forward to it. Like if you train and you train and you train and then it's game day. Like that was the days the server merged was game day. Actually, I probably had played. I was playing like less than 5 hours a week when they merged.
Really?
I was grinding rank 14. That's what I was doing on WoW Classic. So I was playing way too much WoW PvP. And then at that point I was like, okay, I'm gonna come back and back to raid leading because now it's competitive again. Now there's new strats that we're gonna need. It's it's evolved. So I think I wouldn't say there was any concern, but it definitely changed the whole dynamic because now there's a lot more guilds that were interested in doing the content that could do the content.
Now, were you guys disappointed with the level of competition they ended up ultimately bringing, or you know what I mean? Like,
no.
Okay.
I think they had a learning curve at first, but like towards the second half of Classic and in Kunark, they definitely won stuff. They never the things that we really focused on. They had much more difficult time winning. But I honestly, I know we've ragged on Kingdom a bit here, but especially if after you've described kind of where they started, Kingdom did a great job throughout the P1999 Green server. They did a good job. They were competitive. They gave us a run for our money, and they never died. They're still there, right? So
that is impressive.
Yeah. What is it? 3.5, 4 years later now? 5 years? I don't know how long it's been. It's been a long time. They're still there. They're still raiding. They still win Vulak. They still. So I would say that they were a worthy. They were definitely a worthy competitor.
It's definitely obvious that at some point, good leadership appeared and took over in Kingdom, right? surprising to me that you wouldn't just like break off and make your own thing. But like the original leader was kind of where I was disappointed as a player and as like an EQ person who's been in a lot of guilds. But yeah, I mean, looking in, it's clear that people who knew what they were doing eventually got hold of the leadership in that guild.
Yeah. Yeah, there was one guy, Eritani, that I
Hmm.
saw him join them. I tried to recruit him every day for like 3 months because I had played with him all the way back. Actually, the first guild I joined was Taken on P1999 Blue, and he was my guild leader there. He's the one that ended up coming in and kind of showing them the proper way to do things. He was one of the guild leaders of, I think it was Rampage on P1999 Blue and Awakened. He was
I
very
recognize his
knowledgeable.
name.
Yeah.
Did he for some reason I remember Eritani on P1999 Blue and like some drama with that stupid Drake in North TOV to the left right before R&R.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, Ishin.
Ishin of the Sky, yeah. For some
Yeah,
reason I'm remembering that, but this is like 10-year history. I could be getting it all mixed up. So
there's drama for every single. There's more drama on P1999 than any server of any game I've ever seen, and it's not like a little bit more. It's like 5 to 10 times as much more. I mean, they have
right.
entire Discord servers where they file 10-page petitions with pictures and timestamps, and then they have rebuttals, and it's like a whole lawyer quest thing. They have judges
Right.
and juries, and it's kind of like it's its own little social meta of just craziness. But yeah, and it all comes down to the fact that everyone's competing for this one target every week, right?
Right.
That drives all this drama.
So I think now would actually be a good time to talk about the kind of meta on P1999 Blue and Green, the shifts and everything. Like I know there's like an FTE system with like zone wide shouts, and there's like you guys do like a draft, and there's quakes. And can you just cover like that process?
Sure. So I didn't play from the beginning of P1999 Blue, but I have some history of it. So I'll just start at P1999 Blue. I think the way it started is a dragon would spawn and everybody would just kill it right away. Like everyone would
Right.
swarm it and kill it, and then
And
they
they
would
didn't even have
petition.
windows at that time, right? It was just like every
Right, yeah, and so I think that then the GMs, they would petition them. The GMs would say who attacked it first, and then that guild got the loot. That was how it started. So it's always been a FTE is the winner for a P1999. Um, so then as you went further, they added variants. So now instead of the dragon spawning every 7 days on the dot, it was every 7 days plus or minus 8 hours. Then they added a yellow text. The yellow text would say a zone-wide shout. Faradar has been engaged by Fates, right? And everyone in the zone would see that. And that meant your guild was allowed to kill that dragon. That was basically like FTE is king. If you had the FTE, no one should be touching it. No one should be putting aggro into it. And there's a bunch of other rules that the GMs. This was all run by the GMs. People would petition, the GMs would make decisions. Then they would create rules based off of the situations that they saw. So if the mob went unaggroed, it would drop the FTE, and another guild could get FTE and pull it in and kill it. Then they added the quakes, where the quakes would spawn a bunch of different all the dragons in the whole world at once, which means now there's 20 targets up in Kunark or 5 targets up in Classic. Other guilds could kill stuff at the same time, spread the wealth. Then during Kunark, I think they might have added the quakes at the same time as it wasn't a draft at first, it was a class system. They started with a class system. There was 3 classes, and the dragons would rotate between being each of these 3. The first one was FFA. Anyone could kill an FFA target. Then there was Class C, which was competitive. To be a competitive target, you would have to go after the competitive mobs. And if you didn't want to go after a competitive target, you could be Class R, which was restricted, and they had rotations in Class R. So if there was every 3 Trakanons, I think it would go like 1 FFA, 1 competitive, 1 Class R. Now, a Class R guild can go after the FFA one. Anyone can go after the FFA one, but anything in Class R is rotated by all the guilds that were in Class R. So that was on P1999 Blue during the end of Kunark era. And it was a way that was kind of, instituted to spread the loot around. Then during P1999 Blue and Velius, they added some additional things, like they've rooted a bunch of the dragons in North TOV, and they removed it so you could be bound in North TOV. So they were constantly changing the meta. If you played 1 year during Velius and Blue, it would be different on how you would do the raids than a second year. For the first couple of years, everything was just pulled to the zone in. Then you would have characters that could, like run up. Rogues would run up, and then they would click a TL box, and there was no leashing. It would just run right to the zone in. They added 1,500-yard leashing at one point, and when that 1,500 loc leashing completely changed the meta again. Now you had to go pull it and not leash it, so it would be a foot race from the zone in. All of the monks, there would be 30 monks and bards at the zone in. Vulak would spawn. They would all run up and try to get FTE on it, and whoever got FTE, then their guild had to pull it back into the zone in and successfully kill it. So that was the meta for a little bit on Blue. Then it became, they rooted everything. Now you had to crawl with your entire raid through the zone and kill stuff, which is how it is on TLP. Because I think everything is rooted in TOV there.
Yeah. TLP, yeah, everything's been nerfed. The rooted dragons in Velius were always there on TLP, but they did the same treatment to VT. We used to pull everything in Vexthal to the zone line of Vexthal. Mm-hmm. And now, like, if you pull a mob out of its room, it death touches you instead. So get fucked. But there used to be so many broken things with Vexthal. And I mean, there still are. You could still go crazy in VT by like jumping through. You know how the zones have like invisible walls? Right. VT has a big invisible wall on the other side of the moat. But there's a spot where if you're maximum shrunk and on a mount, you can jump through a little hole in the invisible wall.
And up next to Blob, too.
Yeah, and then from there, like, that's how we used to pull everything. But now that you can't pull everything, it's like you have to find a way to navigate to each room,
right?
Using invisible walkways that are like on the roof and dropping down in between the zone walls, and then it pops you out in the right spot. It's like watching like a Pokemon speedrun or some shit on Games Done
working
Quick.
As intended.
Right, and I mean, like, most servers aren't even competitive enough that they need you to do that anymore. And TLP guilds are notoriously rife with like cheaters. So they'll just put like, they'll find the spots and they'll put Koth mages in like the critical positions so that like the warm bodies don't have to learn the tricks. But it sounds like it's a lot more fun when the dragons in TOV are not rooted.
That's completely dependent on who you ask. As a raid leader, I liked the rooted ones because, to me, crawling an entire raid of people through NTOV, that's how raids are supposed to be. Now, if for some people liked it when you could just pull them all to the zone, and it was still competitive. The people to that were, you call them your playmakers, the ones that you trust to go run out there and do some wild stuff with DAs and voidances and DA idols, and those people were able to do those both in both metas, right? And the meta where you have to pull it in, and in the meta, like right now when they do Vulak on Blue and Green, they don't kill any of the guards, they don't kill any of the trash. They use DA mages, create a huge kite of the entire zone, and then just throw DA'd players at it over and over again, while 6 wizards kite the Vulak guards using flux staffs, and the entire guild's killing Vulak, where basically all of NTOV is kited in one way, shape, or form while this is all going on with 100+ people. So, it's crazy.
I can't even wrap my head around it. Like, I'm trying to imagine it. You know what I mean? It's insane.
So basically, you know where the airy pit is. You send DA mages from all the way up by trips. One goes right, one goes left. They have like 2 or 3 DAs, DA earring, DA ring, DA idol, and they just pull it all there. And then you just keep sending. You cough them back up. You have like 4 or 5 people assigned, and they just keep pulling all that stuff.
How many
down
people
there.
do you need to do a clear, or do you do this like there's usually like 1 or 2 mobs up?
So the current rule, I believe, is that when the last blocker dies, everybody has to get out of North TOV, and then like 10 minutes later you can start coughing to trips, and that's when it begins. That's how they currently have it laid out. That it's always evolving rules, but
right.
So once that first cough goes out, within 45 seconds, there's probably 30 mages there that are just coughing all of the other players up. Like if you know how to Koth right, you Koth every 12 seconds or so, and then the first mage gets one mage, and then you have two come in, so all of a sudden you're at five mages, all summoning another mage, and then the mages also are part of the pool too.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I haven't done a competitive Vulak engage like that probably close to a year and a half. It's been a while, but that when I left P1999 Green, they were just starting to get to where Blue was, and we were doing those tactics against Kingdom. And then what happened was the Blue leadership all came over and joined Kingdom. The
Oh.
and they made characters and joined Kingdom. It was because they were pissed off something the GMs did, and they were going to prove their point this way. I forget how it happened, but a bunch of them came over and they taught Kingdom how to do all of the Blue strats. Blue had at this point like 6 years of Velius, so they had really refined a lot of their strategies to be able to min max how these engages were occurring.
It's like a time traveler coming to show you how to fight in
Right.
war, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So that's a wild trip. How long does it take after, like, let's say you get FTE, right, and you die? Do you instantly lose FTE, or is it like 30 seconds for it to cool down before another player can tag it from a different guild?
It depends on who's on the aggro list, right? So if once everybody has left the aggro list, it's instant.
Mm-hmm. Instant. Okay. So do you have
If you
you try to get like 2 or 3 people on the tag team?
second, yeah, it's called like getting secondary. Yeah. So let's say let's say I'm racing for Sev. I'll pick Sev. That's an easy one. The Sev race starts at Field of Bone zone line. When it spawns, everybody runs. You're only allowed sow speed. Generally, a ranger with a wind striker wins with the bow shot.
Mm-hmm.
Then you want everybody in your guild to put secondary into it, whether it's Bracer of Hidden on the initial or if it's throwing another bow into it. Because if that puller gets charmed, then it unlocks the FTE. It's unaggroed, and once it's unaggroed, anyone else can get a new FTE. And tactics like using Memblur are elite. You're not allowed to use like blur stuff.
Right. And it's the Spirit Wolf max speed thing is just because it's unfair if one guild has more drums than the other guild.
But we had all the drums going into Kunark, so it was one of the. I mean, they changed the rules as they went. Like just in Kunark, everything is a camp, right? So I remember I was like, okay, I want my guild to have Howling Stones keys. So I went down and I camped Chancellor. And after like 12 hours of it, the GMs made me made me leave the camp. They're like, you get your prod and you have to leave. You can't keep camping it anymore, which was completely new rule that they just made up on the spot. And
Right.
stuff like that happened all the time. They added the bag limits, they added the bard speed. So they were pretty much trying to, I guess, even the playing field, which I understand, trying to give the other guilds an opportunity to do things. But one of the fun ones when Sky came out, we camped Ishvamal for like 2 months before Sky. We had two players at Ishvamal for 2 months. I think we had 12 copies of Summon Corpse. Because that's what we're like. We wanted to do the fastest sky clear possible.
Right. Summon corpse up at each island after a few keys.
Yep. And so a week before Sky came out, they turned it into a list camp. I don't know if you're familiar with the list camps, but for legacy items, yep,
I did a few list camps.
Yep. So for legacy items, they did this thing where you type /list, you go next to the mob, and it puts you on a list of players. And every 15 minutes, you have to click a box, or you have to type something out and then click the box. And if you don't do that for more than after 2 minutes or before the next one comes up, so after 7 to 15 minutes, it kicks you off the list. Whoever's the first person on the list gets access to the loot of the mob when it dies. So this is a way that they let people get their mana stones, get on the list and get to it. So they made Ishvamal a list camp like a week before Sky dropped because we had all the summon corpses and we were just holding the camp. Two players holding it for taking turns. They earned DKP for doing it. So we were when we got those summon corpses, we were able to use those to clear Sky from top to bottom. I think it was in like 12 or 16 hours. I forget exactly. I think it took us a little longer to get Hand of Vishan because we had to split it from Eye.
Yeah. The list camps, man. I can camp something all day long. I don't mind. But the list mechanic makes me so anxious that I'm going to accidentally be sitting here totally normal, camping the item and just miss the random thing. Sometimes it pops up in like different parts of your screen.
Yeah.
So I'm like over there like going crazy, like And it wasn't always exactly 15 minutes, right? It would have like a little bit of variance. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, did I miss it? Where is it? Like, I can't find it. And when
It's
you're like 20 hours into your Mana Stone camp, your mind isn't all there. You know what I mean? Those things were fucking brutal.
yeah, it was bad. I mean, that was even more inhumane than the list system that I created for SEAL Team. You know, the list system that they created. But I mean, I get it though. Like, what's the alternative, right? Just people kill stealing each other. Some
Right.
guy saying he owns the camp for 2 months straight. It's not really a good way.
Yeah. I wonder like what would happen if I was like live streaming myself camp it at a list camp and I missed the list trigger, but like you could see I was there camping it and conscious, like I had a cam on. They'd just say fuck you still. Damn.
And so I mean, the biggest fuck you was on teal versus green, camping Mana Stone. What do you think happened when the servers merged?
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, I would think like the fair thing to do would be to like snake it, right? Like number one becomes number one here, then two is like the other server's number one, and you just like stack it. But they probably just took teal and stacked them all on top of greens, right?
So they did based on the amount of time you were there.
Oh, okay, that's sort of fair.
But what that meant was that all of teal went behind green, because green's list was 7 days in at that point.
Ooh.
If you were number one, you had been there for 7 days straight when they merged, and the guy at teal had been there like 24 or 30 hours, so he got bumped to like fifth or something, you know. So
yeah,
you know, there's just stuff like that. There's a lot of drama behind the list system. When Holgrish Elder Beads came out, there was a list for that, but they're not magic, so they're pickpocketable. So people were pickpocketing the beads, and
nice.
they got banned. The people that were pickpocketing, which, you know, is kind of funny.
They're just playing the game as the mechanics
Right.
exist, right?
Yeah.
I remember some drama over, I think it was Mana Stone, where someone refused, like the number one player couldn't solo the eye, and the number two people wouldn't help them kill it.
Yeah.
Until they left, but it went for like a day or 2 days with no one killing the PH that was sitting there. Everyone's on the list,
and then eventually the GMs got involved, and basically they, at that point, after that, they created a rule that said you had to be able to kill the PH if you were number one or have
Makes
friends.
sense. Yeah.
So I mean, I used to do that for the beads camp. I would sit there on like some crappy level 50 character that hadn't burned his lockout for it yet. And then once I was first on the list, I'd ask a buddy to come, you know, help me camp it because I couldn't kill anything.
Right. So when Cunark came out, were there any list camps in Cunark? Fungi stick, maybe?
No, the fungi stick, we held fungi for like 3 weeks nonstop, and we never saw staff. And then Kingdom, I think it was Kingdom or Black Lotus, got the camp. I was like, all right, whatever. This thing doesn't drop on this server, and they got like 2 within a day. So I think they just added the legacy loot in after or something. They were trolling us somehow with that one. But
I
what
always
list
feel like
camp
some
is
of
there?
the legacy item drop rates on P99 are a little bit bullshit. Like they're made much worse than they were for real in Classic. It didn't take you 72 hours to get a Mana Stone in Classic EverQuest.
The list camp was the locket. That's what the list camp was.
Locket of Escape. Yeah. But not Circlet of Shadows.
It was part of it. You got the Circlet of Shadows if you were number one on the list when you were up there. Yeah. And I think Necklace of Superiority might have been. No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
That's Drusilla, right? And Howling Stones.
It dropped off something in Droga at first.
Oh.
Like initially, it dropped off a mob in either Droga or Down Ears or something. It dropped off something else before Drusilla. Okay. Something that like a level 50 monk could kill, you know.
Yeah,
a soloable mob.
So Cunark's coming out. You guys don't know when it's coming out, right? It's kind of random, or do you get an advance?
They gave us, I think they gave us like a week or two notice. I don't remember exactly. We had you know, I think we were like confused. We weren't sure if it was going to come out or not. And then they released it. They gave like a timeline early on, but it's not like Oakwynd TLP where they're like, it's definitely coming out at this time. It was a little ambiguous.
This exact minute.
Yeah. Yep. So when Kunark came out, our goal was to kill Trakenon as quickly as possible and VS. So it came out, we killed Faye, then we went and farmed the entire guild Seb keys. Um, while this was happening, we sent some people to hold other camps. Like I was in charge of the prod camp. We had somebody in charge of the Zalgaz camp. So we wanted to hold the Howling Stones keys. I didn't know how good the Howling Stones XP was going to be. Our group that we sent a group in there, I think it was a trio, and they were like the second group to level, but they were also our like three of our best players.
Right.
So
we don't waste it on scrubs, right? You got to put in the good people for that.
well, scrubs wipe in Howling Stones because it's very hard.
Yeah.
So I don't think what I'm saying is I don't think it's that great XP because you have to play like perfectly with a perfect comp to be successful there without wiping.
Right. And that same perfect comp playing perfectly would crush anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
But there they have unlimited mobs. That's the and they made lots of plat. So we did those things. Once we power leveled 4 warriors to 52, we got evasive. That takes a lot longer on P1999. So I think it came out at like 5 or 6 at night or something. It might have even been a little later. And we killed VS and Trakenon the next morning at 10 a.m. And the highest levels we had were 52 when we went in there.
Now,
So
for VS, did you guys just Blade Stopper basically through all the life tap procs?
Enchanters spamming.
Oh,
too.
yeah, Enchanter Root, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, VS was pretty easy. We just had the tank on it. We had him healed, and we had him get the the runes, and it just died. It was fine. The only thing that we had to do was not turn it when evasive was good enough. Trakenon melted also. Both of them for Trakenon. I think for both of them we had like 10 plus pets. Like we had a bunch of Krupp pets for Trakenon. So we just killed it on its spawn point. We ate the AoE. So one of the fun things that happened during this time. This is when I was on Eridune because I wanted to see what Kunark was like. Like I wanted to look at the strats. I like learning from other guild leaders and seeing what they're doing. So I saw what Adabishi was doing, all the Kunark strats, and I tried the Trakenon kill spot on Blue. Actually, we tried it on Blue because there was a draft week on Blue where they let all the guilds draft a target. And so we went with 7 Suns to their Trakenon kill on Blue with like 10 of my buddies that had Blue characters, and they let us use their draft to try that positioning. So on Blue, we had Trakenon in the banish spot, and we were killing it, and it started running, and it ran through the wall and glitched up into NG and just wiped out all the groups that were up there.
Nice. Great,
so
yeah.
we decided we weren't going to use that spot. But it was a fun.
I think, without mitigation of the mighty making the fight much longer, I don't think you really need it.
No, we didn't. We didn't, and so we did really well at the start there. We got the dragons down. Then during this time, like Kingdom was focused on leveling, and they got level 55 mages before us. Like they had 4 Koth mages before we had 1 Koth mage leveled.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, we were kind of behind because the killing Trakenon was a Koth race to the Poop Mountain is what it was called there, the hill right by Trakenon. So what we ended up doing for like the first 6 or so competitive Trakenons was we would start at the zone in, and we would clear to the jail, and then from the jail we would use 2 or 3 DA people to just create a huge train of all the shrooms and the jugs and dump them all in the corner, and we ran our whole raid up. We just trained our whole raid up and then would engage Trakenon.
How does it work? Because maybe on P99 this doesn't happen, but like on TLP, people are camping shrooms, people are camping jugs. You know what I mean? Like, are there groups that you're running over?
Yeah, the place where they're camping shrooms is the brain. We call it the brain room, which is if you're in the jail, it's the room to the right there. So they're generally pretty safe there. People camping jugs generally camped it in Trax Lair, so they were dead already.
Yeah,
there's a safe spot in Trax Lair where you can log out characters kind of to the west. Like you could actually heal from Poop Mountain. You can heal down into the lair, and that's where a lot of people would camp in that because it's a safe spot there.
So interesting. People would always camp on TLP in like what we would call like jug house, before the door that is one way.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know why people didn't use that on. Maybe some do on TLP, but it was always like people would be camping. People were camping them generally in the lair there.
Now, do you guys bat phone like Protector and Tola?
No, those were 2-hour spawns, so they were just killed.
Shit.
Yeah, they were just killed nonstop by whoever was in there.
Okay. And then what about the open world dragons, Sev, Gore, Talendor? Did you guys get all of those first?
Those appeared at a different time. Those weren't.
Okay.
The only thing that was out at launch was VS, Fae, and Trakenon. And I wasn't playing when they released epics and those dragons. I wasn't playing at that point in time. I was playing WoW at that point.
Okay. When did VP drop?
I was playing for VP. VP dropped pretty early.
And you guys had the only track teeth on the server at that point? We
did, yeah. We had like 60-something keys. We had gotten every Trakenon when VP came out.
You could pre-camp the full VP key before VP dropped?
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Yep. So we had 60 people, and we mostly focused. We had enough healers, and then we focused on DPS because the meta there was to pull everything to the zone in and burn it down, and you had to burn it through gate. So we didn't save them. You just DPS'd it because the AoEs hit so hard. You couldn't line of sight. VP is an outdoor zone. You couldn't line of sight the AoEs on P99. So something like Nexona's AoE, which is basically going to kill you within like 30 seconds. You just burn Nexona. Everybody dissed. Same thing with like Hoshkar. Everybody's slowed because they're eating this AoE. So a couple of things that were kind of funny about VP, we only keyed one shaman because we went the clerics. The clerics have the best heals, but that one shaman hated us by the end of our first VP clear.
Had to do every single buff, every single slow.
Yep.
So. Yeah, if I was a shaman, I'd be like, nah, not me. Get the next guy. Like,
I mean, he got all of the loot, the PE hammer, for free basically. But yeah, he was not too thrilled with us. But yeah, I think we had somewhere around 50 or 60 keys when it first came out. And so the keying process was I don't remember VP being really all that bad, just because it took us like 12 hours I think the first time because we were learning, but there was no competition there at all. So we just waited till we killed Trakenon and it wasn't in window, and then we went and did VP.
Nice. And then did you ever have much competition inside VP, or was like Kunark done before anyone else could get a real raid force?
Yeah, pretty much.
Do guilds go back and clear VP during Velius still?
Yes.
Yeah.
PD is the big one.
Yeah.
So
do you want like still Hoshkar boots are good or no?
They're not bad. I mean, 41% haste is 41% haste, but there's a lot of options for 41% haste once you unlock all that Velius loot. You're looking at options that are much better stat-wise, too.
Yeah, I think the AC on the boots is pretty low, right? And kick damage is derived from boot AC.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a mechanic on P99 or not. I know that AC is not really that big of a deal on P99. Like, there's some thresholds, but it's not nearly as strong as it is on TLP.
TLP is just like the answer to everything is stack AC, stack AC, stack AC.
Yeah, and magic resist too. Because if your warrior's feared,
right, he's not doing anything.
We did Venerate Sathir Thursday with a warrior that had over 500 MR, and he didn't get tapped. Never got tapped. It made it really easy.
That's the same strat for like those 2 a.m. Trakenon kills, just like all MR, fuck everything else, and track just falls over. So they go back just for basically Crown of Ryle and Rub the Azure Sky, pretty much, right? Yeah. Maybe a Sow Sword.
The earring and the shroud, the Sow Sword is nice. Hoshkar, the reason we loved Hoshkar early on was the pre-nerf cleric staff, which is a 300 clicky greater heal that you could just spam.
Now, when the nerf comes out, does it nerf the one you already own?
I don't think it did.
That's amazing then. Yeah, that's
Some
great.
of them, some items were nerfed. Some of them stayed pre-nerf.
What about the Donalds?
That got nerfed.
That got nerfed, yeah.
It got nerfed hard. Yeah.
That
It
sucks.
nerfed everyone's Donalds.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like one of those items. It really was too powerful, though. So
It was so good. I mean, from when I put my personal Kunark list together as a monk, I put a Donald's BP at number 10. I mean, I had a cleric that I used also, but it was simply so that I could carry it around with me and always have it on the cleric in my group because it was all guildies. So I trusted them with it, you know. But
right, like here, you hold this.
That's how I leveled. I was like, here's a Mana Stone and a Donald's BP, you know, like let's go kill some stuff.
Like, that's the other thing about the Mana Stone. Does the Mana Stone work in non-classic zones on P1999?
It does not, no. It did work in the plains for quite a while, and then eventually got nerfed there. But yeah, I would use the Mana Stone on my monk in Plane of Fear to go low health and rip kites off people.
Right.
And then you can wart pot back. So one of the strats that they used there, they would do a kite around the firewall, and the firewall provided line of sight, so you just get the whole zone in a kite along the firewall. So I would run in secondary their Bard with Bracer of Hidden, so that those mobs were all on my aggro table. I'd Mana Stone down to low health. That turns the trajectory of all the mobs so that they're coming across. And then as soon as the Bard was where they would get in front of him, I would wart pot back out of low health.
Right.
And I would just kill their Bards that way.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's really awesome. How much would you like to have the ability to block buff on P99?
It would have been nice for sure with the secondary thing, you know, locking in FTE. But there's some mobs where they let you do it, and there's some where they don't let you do it. Like on a dragon, that wouldn't be allowed. But kiting a bunch of trash mobs in the zone, you can do that sort of thing. So
it's not like FTE protected that same way.
Right. Yeah. So this is one of the parts about P99 that really made it cool, was that there's so many different little intricacies to the different metas, because you had the variable of physically what could you do with the items in their current state, because the items were always changing, they were nerfing stuff. Then what were you allowed to do based off of what the GM said, right? And then you also have what's your opponent doing, and what do you know how to do. So there's a lot of different variables that caused the competitive aspect of it to always be changing, and the competitive aspect is a lot more kind of fleshed out than it is on TLP. There's not really like the competition on TLP for the longest time was just DPS race, right?
Yeah.
Train the dragon on the other team because they're not ready, or DPS race it, or there's not really much more to it. Now there is an ability to hold FTE and lock that mob to you with a lot of threat. So it's kind of transforming a little bit more towards some of the metas on P99, but it's not quite there yet, because they make it so you can unlock FTE.
Which seems, I don't know. I see why they do it, because people will because FTE's every single mob, and people would kite like Quillmane, you know what I mean, for their whole life on TLP. But it's shitty when people jack your raid mob, because they spam Rune on you. Speaking of that, I heard you got a PD not too long ago because you had the good FTE breakers blocked.
Yeah. So it was probably one of the most fun raids that we've had, or that I've had on TLP. But basically, PD spawned. The competition logged in with about 60 people. We logged in with about 30. So I don't think a lot of people expected us to get to kill. We all ran up to the door, and I basically just stood at the door waiting for one of their rogues to open the door to the PD hallway. And once they opened it, I just booked it down to PD, which was like the P99 meta, race to get FTE. And then I had all of my buffs blocked, and except for Cure Disease, because I have Shield of the Immaculate. So I threw a jab at it, got the FTE, and then just started spamming threat into it while I pulled it back. And so they weren't able to unlock it because we had one of our Shadow Knights run down and harm touch it and get the
Nice, build a shit ton of aggro there.
Yeah, and then at that point, they were actually spamming heals into our tank for like the first 2 minutes of the fight. We didn't even have to heal because they were trying to out threat with those heals. But
just like, hey, thanks, man, appreciate it.
yeah.
Was this after the suspensions were up, or was it during the suspension time?
It was after the suspensions were up, so they were at full force. It was kind of their welcome back to the. So
good.
It was it was definitely a good kill. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, so you guys pretty much dominate Kunark more than Classic, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say about the same. I think there was a point in time where, like, if they didn't do that, if they didn't implement the bag limits on Trachanon, that Kingdom probably would have died off at that point. We had pulled in like a good 20 of their members, and what happened was they instituted the bag limits. Then I deleted the Discord that had all of the rules. It was the UN Discord that I had created. I deleted that Discord because it basically, what I said I was going to do. And then we went and killed all of the open world targets that had been designated by those rules as like the server mobs. And so they didn't like that. They suspended me for a month, and they indefinitely suspended SEAL Team from raiding. So they
suspended you for breaking your own rules that you made.
Yes. After Sweet. I told them, yeah, that's what I was saying. These guys are, it's kind of a shit show from the leadership on P1999. But I get it because I made them look like a fool when they put these bag limits in. And basically, we created this entire system where all the guilds were working well together. And as the guild that had the ability to compete for these mobs, we chose not to. And from the beginning, we said, if you take away the 7-day targets and force us not to compete for them, then we're not going to be a part of this system anymore. So I deleted that, and we went and killed those targets. Then they basically banned me and a few of the other leaders and indefinitely suspended the guild. So at that time, it gave the other guild some traction because they went and were able to kill some dragons uncontested, and so that was kind of like their revitalizing point. And it was probably one of the healthier things for the server overall as far as keeping it competitive, because at that point we still smoked them, but they from that point forward they were able to at least hold their own. Now when we got to Velius, we still killed 60 something dragons, Sleeper's Tomb key dragons before they got one. So there was still definitely a gap, but that allowed the gap to be kind of closed a little bit.
So what was the Velius launch like?
I wasn't there. I did not participate in the Velius launch or any of the planning. I was doing, after that suspension, I took a break and I was doing WoW Classic Naxxramas during that time.
Okay. I heard that on P99, the Velius loot is like really garbage at first. They have the pre-buff loot for things like Vulak and even like AOW. Like BOC has like no proc and way less stats.
Never has a proc.
Really?
Yeah. VOC sucks. VOC is a twink item.
Jeez.
Yep. So, but yeah, stuff like Marokar's dagger goes through like 3 different changes throughout the timeline. But some of the loot is still pretty good.
Yeah, I mean better than most of the Kunark shit anyway. But I imagine like some of the epics hold pretty good value in those early eras of Velius, the early patches. Yeah. Do you know from experience, like, or from like just hearing it, what was killing Avatar of War like on Green?
I was actually there for the first Avatar of War kill. I was there for the first AOW kill, and then for the first Ventani kill. I led those raids.
Okay. And so how far into the expansion are you? Like how many weeks or days when AOW dies?
I think I was there for the first 2 Nair also. It was all the ones where like we were waiting for our warriors to get some gear, just having enough healers. The way we did it with a lot of pets. We had a lot of pets. What did we do? Okay, I remember exactly what happened. We had like 10 pets. We lost all of our warriors. The problem was keeping the tanks up. The tanks would get 1-rounded. We didn't have We didn't have 6,500 HP tanks. We didn't have 6K HP tanks. We had 5,700 HP tanks, and they could get one rounded. So we ran through all of our defensive warriors, and the AOW flipped to a wolf, enchanter wolf pet. So we swapped the chain to the enchanter wolf pet, and we stabilized on the enchanter wolf pet tanking for like 3 minutes while we rezzed and buffed all of our tanks.
Wow.
And then went back into the tank order. So our first AOW was like a 15-minute fight or something like that. Once we got our tanks up, we got to the point where we could do it with like just a few tanks. But basically, once the tank's defensive went off, we would switch to a new tank. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I love about raid leading and games like this and WoW, are just figuring out like what's the quickest that you can do something, the least number of people that you can do something with. And so trying to theorycraft how to do Ventani and AOW with like a pretty green guild as far as gear goes, basically comes down to either being mana neutral, having enough tanks to go around. On Ventani, I made a mistake. We keyed warriors to try and get, because that was also like a 15-minute fight. So we ended up keying warriors and tried to keep defensive up and do tank swaps, but it's not the fight to do tank swaps with because of the silence. Instead, when we ended up killing it, we just used one warrior the entire time, dropped our CH chain down to like 1.5 seconds, and used 15 clerics.
Wow.
So I think we did it with 38, and 15 of them were clerics.
Ventani, it's slowable on TLPs. I don't know if it is on P99, but it's like when we did that 20-hour Sleeper's Tomb clear, we must have cast it on him like 50 times. He resisted it every time, so we just said fuck it. But we had like 1 or 2 tanks, and we had a bunch of monks. And Ventani was where I was like, I fucked up bringing all these monks, because like Necros shred Ventani. The monks just had to dodge so often that our Ventani fight with 20 people or whatever we had had to be like 30 minutes. I think it's on YouTube somewhere.
I've seen it.
It took forever.
I've seen it before.
Yeah.
It
was miserable.
I mean, the resists are different on P99, so you can't like Necros are Twitch bots.
Really?
Yeah, they don't do raid damage really.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's one of the things I like about TLP. Casters have a lot more, like shamans and necros are amazing DPS on TLP. Not so much on P99.
Yeah, that is a shame. Just like our mages, a lot of like just Kothbot and Rod machines.
Yep.
Yeah, that sucks.
It's like one of the things I would teach our mages to do is maintain a stack of 200 mod rods. Like that was their job at raids. It doesn't sound very fun,
Yeah, no, it sounds terrible. Jeez. So what was Tunair like?
Tunair is similar, where it was like just trying to get there's a few parts of that fight. The ogre wall was a big one. You would have Tunair does a knockback, so we'd put ogres in front of the tank, so the tank would get knocked into the ogres. The tank had to maintain a buff order so that they could have their levitate not get dispelled, but they also needed to get a dispel on her roots. So there was just, and you have a 1 second chain. It's a DPS race basically.
Now, so does a Tunair just summon the tank back, even if there is a big knockback?
Sometimes. Sometimes, but it wasn't perfect there. So if we were waiting on that, sometimes you'd lose a bunch of your melee. We used a lot of charm pets.
Would you clear the zone?
Yes. Per GM mandate.
Oh. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
On Blue, we developed a method. Acons and myself and a couple of the other bards that we were with there. Terraclon was the other bard that helped. We basically figured out how to unlock all of the mobs from Tunair, kiting them, and then we could just go in and kill Tunair. But they said you weren't allowed to do that.
It works on TLP too. It's probably a little bit different, but you you tag her, get her to spawn there, and then trigger them almost like CT. The way you can drop it off CT, they walk to like a spot and then fuck off, and then they're no longer attached to her. You could do that. There's like some bugginess where she'll randomly like call them in the middle of the fight if it goes too long. Yeah. And then you're kind of fucked when like the Silence Panthers or whatever come in. But yeah, there's cheese for that on TLP. Same thing. Makes the zone a lot more fun.
Yeah, for us, growth was a 6-hour slog every time we went to do it.
Yeah, fuck that.
Yeah, and so I'm definitely looking forward to skipping right to Tenaire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Valius will be a lot of fun. Looking forward to doing it and seeing all the differences between P1999 and TLP this time through.
Were you around for the Sleeper's Tomb, like the Sleeper Awakening? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we got to the point where our member base was split between waking it and not waking it. There's a bunch of people that didn't want to farm those Sleeper's Tomb keys anymore. They didn't want to be like They wanted to go after Doze and Tormax and Vulak. They wanted to go after those mobs, and they had their fill of sleepers. We had some new members that wanted to keep sleepers awake. At the end of the day, if we didn't wake it up, it would have ended up destroying the guild over time, just because of that. So we decided to wake it up. We announced to the server that we were waking it up. And then we went and woke it up. There was one of the things that we were going to try and do is create a faction war and take a shot at killing it, which there was like a 0.1% chance it was going to work, but we figured, why not? So
Were you going to do that in Sky Shrine?
And Sky Shrine, because it spawns Yellonak. We were going to train as much of the zone up into the layer during that faction war, and then I think we did something where we bound a bunch of level 5s under it to try and eat DTs and stuff, but we didn't even get it to 98%. And all of the other guilds on the server went and stood on top of Yellownack's spawn and just killed the Yellonak. Yeah, right when it spawned. So it was kind of fun. We had 110 or so of our raiders showed up for it, and yeah, I mean, it was kind of closure to like the long chapter of prioritizing Sleeper's Tomb.
Right. And I mean, it's not until that moment that progression has really ended. You know what I mean?
Right. So yeah, at that point, and it unlocks the other 4 dragons don't spawn on P1999. So instead, it just unlocks a quest for the prismatic scales.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the only new content that comes out.
I heard there's like a 0.1% chance for Primal to drop off the golems now.
It's not that low. It's like 10%, I think.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, so like a Primal on Blue, like 3 years into Blue, was going for the equivalent of like a Vulak item. DKP wise.
I mean, still a lot.
Yeah. So a one-hander. Sorry, a one-hander. Like the hammer or the spear.
Wow. But yeah, the rest of the zone is just dead. It's just trash and the 3 golems.
Mm-hmm. And so on, the warders were giving us 6 items every warder, which were 2 to 5 primals at a time.
Right.
So most of our guild had primals, and one of the reasons we wanted to wake it is to not let the competition get that DPS increase.
Right. It's big. Now you have rated at the top level and like WoW Classic, P99 on 2 servers, and now on TLP. What do you think of the difference between TLP and P99 rating, and just like the whole server metas?
It's just super comfy.
Yeah.
It's like I have my 3 scheduled raids. We bat phone stuff when we want to, but I mean, we're killing 5 Faradars every Tuesday with our splits, and I get to plan it all out in advance, get way more loot. It's just way more accessible. I'm looking forward to going through a bunch of different timelines, getting to see things I haven't seen, like doing Lucklin on a TLP, Plains of Powers and beyond. So I think the time where I'd be interested in doing P99 is kind of past, because after just discovering how comfortable the TLP is, I enjoy it a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, like there's pros and cons, but you just can't deny, you know what I mean, how much it's healthier for you. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. You like are
I mean,
killing yourself on the non-instanced kind of content after a
I'm
while.
killing 5 to 6 times as much stuff and spending a quarter of the time doing it.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so that's pretty nice. Now, that being said, the P99 thing, I did the P99 thing on green. I did it in a way that maybe when the next server comes out, another guild will do something like SEAL Team did. But I'm very proud of what we were able to accomplish with the P99 Green server and going from start to finish as
Yeah.
SEAL Team. I had that experience, so
Now, if
I'm
you
ready.
took SEAL Team at its peak and you transplanted them directly into a fresh TLP launch, do you think they would blow everybody out, or do you think it would be competitive because of the rule differences?
Um, yeah, I think it wouldn't even be. I think you could take Kingdom at their best, and they would blow the TLP guilds out of the water
Wow. Okay.
because of the difference in the just how the competition, like the level of competition there was just so high that now there's a couple of differences where you can't make a direct comparison. One of the things on TLP is the dragons are in window every day.
Mm-hmm.
So having those windows every 7 days let people go really hardcore for a day and then not like just take a whole day off and not miss anything.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue is that there's no cheating on P99. Everything that we did, like people say cheating, they mean like I trained a mob on you or something like
Right.
that,
Or
or
you logged in a buff box.
right. So
Right.
the guilds that are on TLP are using a lot of automated stuff for their bat phones for their tracking.
Right.
There's
Talking like
pro
real cheating, like hacks. Like
Right, where they're
warping.
integrating stuff into the client. They're doing stuff with the client that in TLP or in P99 that was a perma ban. So none of those people that used that stuff played there, or at least most of them didn't. There might be
Yeah.
a few that are able to get away with it. So the P99 guys would come there and they wouldn't cheat, and so they'd be at a disadvantage. So it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to say.
Hmm. Okay. And what did you think of going up against mitigation of the mighty mobs for the first time?
Oh yeah, they kicked our butt. I mean,
Yeah.
it's definitely different. Now TLP is easier without mitigation of the mighty. TLP is easier than the
Yep.
dragons on P99. Like if I'm a level 50 warrior auto attacking a level 45 mob on P99, I'm getting my ass kicked.
Oh
On
yeah.
TLP, you could kill it. You could kill
Yeah.
that mob. So there's a difference there. MOTM I think is a great mechanic. I think it makes things it allowed them to balance the game, I would say nearly perfectly to
Yeah.
where like you want things to be. I mean, I've looked at some of those videos from the early TLPs. I played on Vulak, which I think was like the second season of TLPs.
Yeah. What guild were you in on Vulak?
Oh man, that's so long ago. The one that was winning, you know?
Fuck EOE scum.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. That was my first guild. I was a teenager, and I was the number 2 guild there.
What were the two guilds again?
Echoes of Elysium and Faceless.
Yeah, I was in Echoes of Elysium. Yep.
Yeah, you were with Damn Door. Damn Door. Well, you know what?
Yeah.
EOE was founded by the IB guys. It was founded by Ashkari, Ardwin, and some of those other dudes. Not Getsum, but a bunch of IB guys.
Huh. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't even remember the guild I was in. That's how long, that was a long, long time ago. So I don't remember exactly. But
But yeah,
I do know I was in that guild.
back then cheating was even more of the meta. It was like you had to cheat to even come close. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
like there's just macro questing Shadow Knights in Classic and Kunark.
I remember those videos of Venerate Sethir just instantly dying.
Poop. Yeah, gone.
Yeah. Yeah. So to me, this version of TLP, as I'm playing it on Oakwynd, is probably the most fun I've had since P99. And
Yeah.
it's different because I'm playing 20% of what I played when I was doing P99.
Yeah. Now, what did you think of your first time fighting track on TLP on Oakwynd?
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
We did really well. We did 2 Trakanons our first time. and it was 3 days after they released the expansion. So yeah, our goal when Kunar came out, our goal on Oakwynd was to do a day 10 VP clear. So on Sunday we did 2 Trakanons, and then the following Sunday we did 3 Trakanons, and we didn't do
Nice.
splits. So we did them, one, then next, and then the other, just to get as many humans in front of characters as possible. And that's kind
That's
of the meta that I use now with my raids.
that's good. Yeah, yeah. I like that. I like that Oakwynd opened that up, and I'm excited to see where that goes in future TLPs. You could do like more with less,
Mm-hmm.
just by having a team of that's hardcore. I would say that Trackanon probably pound for pound is the hardest MOTM mob because
He's hard.
the life tap boost and everything. Until you get your magic resist really on point, he's just so nasty relative to the other mobs in the era. Like Velius mobs, obviously, if you put them in front of Trackanon, will kill them. But relative to the character power, Trackanon is tough. Everything in Velius falls over. Luckland, everything falls over. I'm trying to think. I hope you stick around and get to do some of that content way after pop and see it on TLPs. But like Tunat, no, Tunat's easy because you just summon tank them. It's a long time before you find any challenging content, unfortunately.
Yeah, Inaruk I think was the hardest thing I've had to deal with yet. There's something about Inaruk where we struggled with him, with the death touches and the just pulling him. I don't know what it was, but he was I would say the bane of our existence. We've done well with Trackanon. I think we came
Yeah.
in more prepared.
Yeah.
I mean, tonight we have 5 or 6 Trackanon splits scheduled. So
Nice.
and we call them super splits. This is our new approach in meta where, let's say you're a boxer, right? I have my 6-box crew, and people don't want somebody bringing 6 characters to a raid, taking up all those raid slots. So what I do instead is I split those up 2, 2, and 2. So we have an 8 o'clock Trackanon, a 9 o'clock Trackanon, a 10 o'clock Trackanon, and each of those we split also. So you'll kill Trackanon with all 6 of your characters, but you'll just be boxing 2 characters for each of those time slots. And so that's what we're using to try and farm out as much loot as we can. So
I like
within
that.
our 3.5 hour DZ time slot, we're killing, we killed 9 VSs on Thursday and then 3 Taos, Sevs, and Phatez. So that's
Yeah.
just I guess that's what I found to be what our approach will be. Then it seems to be working pretty successfully.
You play a lot better boxing 2 versus boxing 6, right? You know what I mean? So you're getting higher performance, better miles per gallon out of your raid that way. Yeah, that's
You could
awesome.
get more. You could do more with less, right? Like you can kill
Yeah.
PD. I think it was Golden Roosters did it with either 19 or 21, which blew my mind. I was like, oh man, we should have been in there killing PD a long time ago. When I saw that they did that. So 24 to 30 is pretty comfortable for doing Faradar right now. So we can kind of split down the raid to a size like that and do more of them.
Yeah, people don't realize it's also not necessarily fun to do minimal numbers on raids. Like it's cool as a proof of concept. There was a guild called My Pants on Agnar that did everything with minimal numbers because they refused to expand. So they did TOV, some of TOV with like 18 or 20 characters, but they were doing like summon, tank, kiting, R for 90 minutes.
Right. So you
And
got
you're
to
like,
find
I
a
can only do this so
balance.
long. Yeah.
Yeah, you want your raid DPS to be high enough to where like the number of splits that you have to find the middle ground. I could do it with 24, but should I bring 32 just so I
Right.
can do it in 25 minutes instead of an hour, and then I can
Right.
do more splits in my time window? So it's about finding that balance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard as a guild leader. I'm sure you feel the pain trying to balance it. Like people are like, we should split more. And then other people, or sometimes the same people are like, raids take too long. Or like you try to split
Yeah.
real deep and they're like, why did we wipe? Or like last week you were bitching that we didn't split deep enough. So sometimes when you split super deep, you wipe. I don't know, bro. Shut up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always the one that's being told like, okay, pump the brakes. Like we
Mm.
don't want to be here for 4 hours. Like I guess I'm too ambitious with the splits sometimes. So I've listened to them, and that's why we've slowly started to increase the splits over time, right?
Yeah,
But as soon as people saw it working, everyone has kind of been in favor of it. Doing the super splits.
that's
It's good.
awesome. That's good. What do you think of? Have you heard about Project Quorum?
Just a little bit. I've heard about it is that it's going to be similar to P1999 in a lot of ways, but it's going to use the live client. So, um, but yeah, do you want to tell me a little more about that so I can?
Yeah, so full disclosure for everyone, I'm not involved in Project Quorum. I'm just a random dude who is interested in it. But Project Quorum basically took the Alcabor project, went open source. They took all their shit and they are making a server that starts in Classic. So the client it's using is the EQ Mac client by default, which is older than Titanium, a lot older. So when you log in, you're like, oh shit, I forgot that this was actually like what EverQuest looked like. You know what I mean? Like from the character select screen, the client when you log in, it's exactly like what you remember. Um, and they also have a little bit of access for you to use the OG Trilogy client, which is like as close, to launch day as you can really get. And no other server is really using the Trilogy client. So out of the box, it's the most authentic classic experience you can get. Like P99 has done a tremendous amount of work to where they can now like go patch by patch pretty much and be era accurate for EverQuest. But there is so much accuracy and authenticity that is built into the client that the player doesn't really necessarily realize until you log into a server like this and you're like, whoa, this is what it should be like. Now TACP, because TACP is a pop server, they didn't care about classic shit. So their classic was kind of a mess. But Project Quorum took a bunch of people and they had like 800 bug reports and 1,000 or 1,500 like database edits and cleaned up all of classic. So it's almost like approaching somewhere in the realm of P99 classic era accuracy, but using the old school client. You can't box, so one account per player, or simultaneous, like no simultaneous logins. There is like a competitive rating, but also rotated rating. I'm not going to get into all the raid rules because there was like a lot of bullshit, but suffice to say, they like the normal spawns, the normal 7-day spawns are rotated once there's enough guilds that it needs to be rotated. But they do quakes every 7 to 10 days, and the quakes are more or less free for all, like compete. So you're competing just about as much as you would on a normal competitive server, but then like guilds also get that rotation shot, so no one is totally locked out of content. And from my perspective, I look at that and I think it's like the best of both worlds. The only reason you wouldn't like it is if what you were trying to do was lock people out of content, pretty much.
Right.
You get that
It sounds
thrill.
like a balance between a lot of the things that have been successful on TLP with the
Oh yeah,
P99 level of difficulty, as far as like that old. I'm assuming it's the old XP curve and
yeah. It's like
some of these more difficult concepts.
they like data mined the real like AC data and resist data and the EXP data, and it makes it frustrating at times because like holy shit, I cannot channel a spell on TACP and on the Quorum beta. Like a mob hits me for 1 damage on my Shadow Knight and I'm like interrupted. I'm like, come on, man. But that's just how it was, I guess. And
Yeah.
the AC feels like it matters, but it's not like shutting down mobs. And the EXP rate is slow. But the point of the server is doing the content, not just racing to dragons. So if
Right.
you're here just to raid, I don't know, maybe you might consider something different. But I know Secrets was saying like 20 days of real life before they expect to see the first level 50s. Hardcore players have a tendency to always like surprise you on that kind of shit.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah. But yeah, it's going to be real slow, and it uses like the classic thing. So if you're soloing or duoing, you'll be a little bit better than if you were in a full group.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you'll be able to Bard Swarm Kite. They're probably working on it. But if you've ever played TACP, the biggest problem with the old client that turns people off is there is no mouse scroll. If you remember when you played in 1999, you probably played in first person, and that's because you couldn't scroll back with your mouse. They did
Right.
like a little hack to edit that in, so you will be
Oh,
able to
that's
mouse
nice.
scroll on Project Quorum. And I think that's like the one big quality of life feature they have added.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason some of these quality of life features have been added, right? And they're
Right.
pretty nice. But I think that server sounds like it'll be pretty successful and might pull a lot of the players on both P99 and TLP over.
I think
The
it's going to be
XP,
big. There's
yeah.
already like over 2,000 people in the Discord, and it
Oh,
launches on
neat.
October 1st. So we still have a bit of time. I think it's gonna be like we'll see at least 1,000. I think we'll see at least 1,000 people on launch, if not more. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna do a guild. We'll see. It's I'm not gonna do like super hardcore Omega guild or anything, but I'm gonna stream it and do like a streamer guild. I know I plan to take like 2 or 3 days off of work and just do like a really hardcore push and see where I land.
See
I
if
don't
you can get
expect
past 12.
Yeah, right. Like I don't
Right,
expect to be the first 50 or anything. When Secrets told me like the timeline to get 50, I was like, I've got like a real life and a family, so I can't
yeah,
take
it's
that much
hard
time.
to do that much. I mean, that even with P99, I think it was like 8 days played for the first. So this sounds
Yeah.
like it's going to be at least 200% slower. But
Yeah.
it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. I'll have to roll up a necro or something to casually play on
Yeah,
there.
you got to come join our guild, dude.
Yeah, it does
It'll be
sound
fun.
it sounds cool. I mean, definitely have my hands full with the Oakwynd server and I'm having a blast. I don't anticipate doing anything outside of the TLP as my primary focus for a long time. But
That's good. I really got to come over and play with you guys on there because I know you and I are friends. Luckland is one of my favorite expansions, and Mischief, where I raid, is like a million miles past Luckland. I would love to come back and run some raids with you guys in Luckland.
that would be awesome. You're welcome to anytime. I know we have some of your guild mates in the the guild already. Some people have said that they've played with you on Mischief or other servers in the past. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and if any of your viewers are interested, we have a very open door policy. So there is no requirements to become a raider except for um, to have join Discord and get level 60 so you can attend the raids. We raid Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday from 8:30 to 12 Eastern, and those are we do some stuff outside of those, but those are the days where people are earning DKP. We do a closed bid DKP on the website, and the atmosphere in the guild has just been really nice. We've had when Kunar came out, everybody was helping everybody else get their epics. As a guild, we completed our epics, things
Right.
like this. So, it's definitely been one of the most enjoyable experiences I've had on EverQuest these last 3 or 4 months now.
Right. And yeah, I know this isn't the Oakland episode, so I'm not going to get in too depth here, but FTE, Fight to Engage, got the server first clear of Classic. So they were top guild for Classic. You guys had a small rough patch. No need to dive in, but one of the top guilds in Kunark and projected to pretty much maintain one of the top two, top three status moving forward. So it's really a great guild to be in. And Cagnan was in your guild. He crushed me on the
Yeah.
leveling race, so I got to give props there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
He's
if
still in
I
the
was
guild, his
is
character. He hasn't been on for a month, but
he's never going to play again.
yeah, yeah,
No, he's there for like the classic and the Kunark leveling races, and then he's out.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, lots of good people there. I'm excited to see how you guys do. And what do you think? Are you going to look at the rule set for EQ 25, TLP 2025, or are you dead set on Oakwynd?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely look at the rule set. It's a long time away from now, so
Yeah.
I'll probably focus on what the guild wants to do and the
Yeah.
players that I'm playing with. That's gonna be the major focus. So I'm interested to see what the rule set is, though. And this Oakwynd is my first run through from start to some time on a TLP. So I've been learning a lot in that run through, and I'm sure if I were to do another TLP all over, I have a lot more experience going into that one.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is learning the players and the clicks and like who to just say no thanks. You know what I mean when they come knocking. But yeah, I'm sure you guys will crush no matter what you do. Hey, so Fates, we're about to wrap up here. Is there anything else, anyone you want to shout out, or anything else you want to cover?
I don't think so. I appreciate you having me on the show and on the podcast and asking me all these questions. I've enjoyed talking about all the P99 experiences and the TLP experiences. I'll just go back and say like everyone, I've led a few of these guilds now, and pretty much none of it's me. Like I give out a idea of how to do a few things, but all the success of all of these guilds is the people that actually do all the work, which are the officers and the other guild leaders and all these. So just a shout out to those guys that have actually made all these guilds successful and helped build them.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for being on. You were, this has been one of my favorite episodes, I got to say, so far. So it's been great. And I'm sure we'll keep in touch and keep playing on some of these same EverQuest servers, and we'll link up, no doubt.
Sounds good.
All
Thank you
right,
very
everyone.
much.
This is DramaQuest out.